What up, what up, what up? Hey, everybody, hope you're doing well. Hey, I just want to let you know, I know everybody can't always support and donate to the podcast, but hey, if you can do a one-time donation, I put up a Buy Me a Coffee link in this description of the podcast. So if you go to the description of the podcast, it'll be at the bottom, and you can just go to that link, and you can buy me a cup of coffee, or two if you want. And that would just help support the show, and I can wake up a little bit more and bring you more info. So thanks for listening to the podcast. If you can donate, that would be much appreciated. And let's get on to the show. What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to Lockdown Universe, home of the bizarre, peculiar, and unheard of stories of UFO, legend, and paranormal lore. Welcome back, welcome back. Happy to be back. Hopefully you guys are doing excellent and taking care of yourselves. Today we're going to title this one, What's Inside is Not Necessarily What's Outside. And what's outside is not necessarily what's inside. So what do we mean by that? We're talking about crashed alien craft. And we're going to talk about a whistleblower, an attorney actually, for many whistleblowers, including himself, who investigated the UFO mystery all the way down to the basement library of the Vatican itself. His name is Daniel Sheehan. You might recognize his name because he participated in the Disclosure Project back in 2001 and has been personal attorney to David Greer, as well as many other high-famed cases. So we're going to talk about him and about what one whistleblower told him about a UFO crash craft. So who is Daniel Sheehan? Well, he's made some recent revelations about UFO whistleblower stories online. According to him, there's been many crashed UFOs that have been recovered by the U.S. military, and he spoke with a whistleblower who took part in the retrieval process. And he states that this whistleblower told him that they recovered a craft that distorted space and time, both inside and outside. So we're going to get to that in just a second. So obviously this comes on the heels of intelligence officer David Grush, who's obviously making his rounds around the internet, but this case isn't really making headline news. This one is on it's on sportskita.com. I mean, it's not even on like a huge website, but this guy is legit. This guy is taking on, what he is a public interest lawyer. He takes on cases that are important for the public interest, including the Pentagon Papers case, the Silkwood case, and the La Penca bombing case, amongst many others. So he takes on these really high-profile cases that serve the public interest. They're not going to make him like millions and millions of dollars usually. They're for his passion projects. So this guy really puts in his time and effort. And not only has he done those cases, but you might also know a man by the name of John E. Mack, who was a Harvard University psychiatrist that worked with many UFO abductees and brought their stories to light in his books. So he worked as personal counsel for John. He also worked as personal counsel for Stephen Greer and the Disclosure Project, and he was on the dais of the 2001 Disclosure Project, talked about his time in the basement of the Vatican, talked about how he jotted down different symbols that he saw on craft pictures in the library of the Vatican. So very interesting dude, very interesting stories that he brings forward. But he states recently that he's talked to a whistleblower, and while speaking with media outlets, he stated that one of the insiders from the crash retrieval teams and programs told him about one recovery that they found a 30-foot saucer on the outside, half stuck in the earth, which is really interesting because I don't know if he's talking about Jonathan Weygandt or not, but Jonathan Weygandt was on a Marine retrieval team, and, not necessarily a retrieval team. He was on a Marine unit investigating a crash to see if there was any survivors who needed help or if they were enemies or what. And then he got kicked out of there. But he stated that that craft was half into the earth. Now, I gotta imagine it might not necessarily be him because there probably are a lot of craft that crash into the earth that are half stuck in there. So I'm not going to say it's necessarily him. But what attorney Daniel Sheehan states is that they tried to hook a bulldozer onto this UFO to pull it out and pulled out a shape like a pie slice, almost like it was part of the way in. Wait, part of the way it was constructed. Oh, okay, I see. When it came loose a couple feet, they stopped immediately. They didn't want to destroy the integrity of the machine. So they're saying this thing was like kind of created like if you were to slice pie, you know, in the multiple ways that we slice pie in like triangles. Sheehan further stated that the UFO was the size of a football stadium from the inside, but from the outside it was only 30 feet across. So they were able to gain access to the inside of this craft. And once inside, they saw that it was not just merely 30 feet in diameter on the inside. They're stating this thing was the size of a football stadium, which are some of the largest um, buildings that we have on Earth. You know, these things you can see from space. That's how big they are. So these things can hold 80,000 people, right? Some of these football stadiums. They're the biggest sports arenas we have. They're like the Coliseum, right, for modern times. Not even baseball stadiums can hold that much. Baseball stadiums can only hold 40,000 people. So it's also worth noting that Sheehan did not share the details about when this UFO was recovered or the exact place and time, but that doesn't matter. He doesn't have to. Um, he also states that during his investigations, um, he's come to find that there is a sophisticated disinformation program that's trying to block the U.S. people, the United States population, from this UFO conspiracy. Let's move forward here. I want to look at this other article that talks about this particular event. Click on it here. We'll pull it up. Now, in this article, they talk about another crash in Glasgow, January 28th, 2023. And I don't know if this is necessarily connected to his case, but they do talk about the fact that there was another case that was very similar to this crash in January 18th, 2023. I don't want to go into that one because I want to stay on Sheehan. Now, Sheehan, he's getting a little bit older, right? He was older when he was, back in 2021. He's got this really cool curly hair. He looks like a nice, affable gentleman. He's very relatable, very, very kind, but very super intelligent. You can tell the words that he uses. This guy probably graduated like the top of his class. He just seems to have just a humongous grasp of knowledge, of worldly knowledge, because he did go to the Vatican before 2021. And he was tasked by the government to go there and find out whatever they could find about UFOs and what they had. And so he went there under special orders and was given access to the basement, which are only given to certain personnel for certain reasons. And when he went down into the basement of the Vatican, he was only allowed to bring a pad and notebook. And when he came back up, they had to flip through the notebook to make sure he didn't like have any documents or didn't write anything he wasn't supposed to write down. What he did was he wrote his notes on the very back, underneath all the pages. He wrote it on the back cardboard piece, and no one actually looked on the back cardboard piece that was underneath all the paper. They looked at the back of the notepad on that cardboard, on that side of the cardboard, but not on the inside. They flipped through all the pages and saw he didn't write anything down. So he kind of snuck it out there, but he got these symbols that were on these craft that were in these pictures in the basement of the Vatican. So this guy knows what he's talking about. And when he's talking to these whistleblowers, he knows exactly what to look for. what pieces of information he can confirm from the past, and what pieces he can confirm from other whistleblowers. That's why he's perfect for this case, because he works with Greer, who also works with these individuals and interviews these folks, and he worked with Mack, who interviewed over 400 uh, not whistleblowers, 400 UFO abductees or individuals who encountered UFOs or aliens. So this guy is like, our modern day Albert Bender, for the government, but he doesn't work for the government anymore. He works for his personal public interest cases. Uh, and he is just bringing forth some really interesting things. Now, the reason I bring this up is because we've had so many stories from not whistleblowers, but from alien abductees or alien crash witnesses who have stated that when they've gone in or looked inside of these craft, it looks like a football stadium in there. It looks like a humongous, humongous dome on the inside that can seat thousands of people. Now, that's not every UFO crash, right? There have been crashes like the Roswell crash where they looked in and it was just a small little craft that could hold 3 people that were about 3 to 4 foot in size. Even Bob Lazar talked about that. The craft that he worked on didn't necessarily have a football-sized stadium in it. However, there are other individuals, and many of them, who have stated that there are. So isn't it fascinating that we have this wide range of different crafts that could be created from different species that could allow for this time distortion? Once you walk into these craft, you can see and house a humongous amount of people, from your civilization, and take it as an arc around the universe. But the physical size doesn't have to match the internal size. Isn't it like it's almost like the end of Men in Black, where they were holding those all the galaxies or universes in one ball, and the aliens are playing like jacks with the balls, playing like marbles with it. And it's reminiscent of size doesn't matter in those Men in Black movies too. Remember, he had like the galaxy on a ball on the cat. The cat was holding the galaxy, and it was on Orion's belt, which was like on his collar or whatever. That size doesn't necessarily relate to what we believe has to have size. So, for example, like you could have a small ball, but within inside that ball, you could have galaxies upon galaxies in it. Now, that's where it gets trippy, right? It gets like mind blowing and like hard to comprehend. But again, we're talking about technology that is eons beyond our understanding. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. According to Randy Kramer, there's plenty of civilizations that are spacefaring, but they're not necessarily millions of years ahead of us. They're only maybe 150 years ahead of us. So it depends on the species you're talking about. And there's so many different species out there. So I think it's really fascinating as we move forward to kind of differentiate this technology. We could talk about the Greys, we could talk about the reptilians, we could talk about, the Agarthans and the Nordics and all these different species. But at the end of the day, it boils down to who has the best tech and and whose hands is it in, and how can we potentially absorb that technology and utilize it for our highest and best purposes. Sometimes we don't use technology for our best purposes and it ends up being a disaster. Could you imagine having that kind of technology and saying, hey, we're going to have a football game and everybody come on in? And everybody, as they walk in, they like kind of like shrink down to like that Matt Damon movie. What was it like? Oh God, like where they all shrunk and they paid money to shrink themselves and they could live like luxuriously. I kind of think of it as that, where we could have this technology, but it'd only be for like the super rich, and then all they would need is like, I don't know, like one orange and one banana to like survive for like eons. It's just like, it's really interesting to think about. Anyway, I'll let you guys go. I'm going to stop rambling. I hope you guys have a great evening, great day, great night, wherever you're at. Take a look at Sheehan, man. Dude is a legend in the UFO field. And again, his name is Daniel Sheehan, Sheehan. Again, part of the Disclosure Project with Greer, part of the Pentagon Papers case, Silkwood case. Lapenka case, counsel to Harvard University psychiatrist John Mack, rest in peace, and then Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project. So, and then again, not only just that, but also worked for entities within the government who sent him to the Vatican to go into the basement and see all that he saw down there. So, have a great night, guys. Take care of yourselves physically, spiritually, emotionally. Follow through on your hobbies and your goals and your dreams, whatever they may be. And as always, continue to question the universe around you. Until next time, guys, take care, and Lockdown Universe is out.